The craziest thing that I learned at the school ever, despite majoring in sociology, was that all of our molecules were made in the sun. Do we know that? So you have hydrogen with one electron around it. To get more complex than that, the molecule needed to be in a heat that's only provided at high enough levels. So every part of us was made in the sun, and then all the energy that we have was also made in the sun, but we spend thank you, yo. She was made in the fucking sun. But we spend all of our time taking ownership of the energy that's not ours and the bodies that aren't ours and saying that it's permanent all the time. We think everything's permanent, but it's not even a little bit. So today's May 3rd. So in 2 weeks, or it was in 3 weeks from now, I went flower picking. The plucked roots dangled, but did not bleed as I'd hoped. People don't bleed as I'd hoped. Instead, they are polite. They let you on buses you do not have money for, and don't stare when you wear scarves like a belt. I wear scarves like a belt, and belts like a leash. This way I don't get lost when looking for frogs. I live in a city, so it's hard to find frogs, but sometimes they're on buses. They sit so still you'd think they were a person, but you can tell by the way they bark. When they bark, you know, that definitely a frog. As you know, frogs don't often bark, so you could ride halfway across the city without noticing 1, 2, 3 lily pads away. Just the other day on a bus, I saw one sitting exactly still, a frog, fat falling across his lap, rippling up and down with every bump, and I could tell he was the Buddha from the way his body spoke, the way it reflected how the road breathed. He had on a monocle, so I asked where he was headed. He said he sat down, fell in love, and has not stood up since. He says he likes it here. He says it's funny how people mistake bus seats for stepping stones. The bus went quiet, but for the ripples. The moment's throat to say, I am where I don't belong, and I always have been. I get my tongue stuck to lampposts and board buses when I do not have a Metro card, but they let me on anyway. And when they do, I sit behind the driver, I go right behind him, and I write in the back of his neck with pencil, I carve it, and the lead never shows up, so I have to dig. And I write, Evan was here? And then I draw a heart around it like couples do on trees, and the frog interrupts. Do you know how to spot a fly? Buzzing around with their briefcases on vibrate now. Now I know a fly when I see one, because flies wear ties like nooses. Flies tie the fat end of ties to metal poles and spend the whole bus ride standing. These flies tell me I don't look like the person I said I was, so I said I'm not anymore. I do say, one time a bus walked into a bar and all the passengers hopped off the hamster wheel and got to know one another. The game was on, so they turned it off and started whispering. 20 minutes later, when they got back on the bus, the flies took a seat, flipped their briefcases on silent. And now I had been waiting for them to settle down, and overcome with excitement, I sat exactly